So I'm 27 years old. My name is Keanu. I grew up here in Quebec, Canada, up until I was 21. I then joined the military, uh, fairly young, I guess, so to say, and kind of found my way out towards British Columbia. That's where I'm living right now, on Vancouver Island to be exact. Yeah, I'm a very athletic guy, very outgoing, have a good sense of humor, and I'm always doing something. But yeah, and I've been obviously arm wrestling now for 2016, so it's been 6 years, coming on 6 years.
So how did you actually get into that avenue, that
Mhm.
arena, that sport? Because it's not your traditional sport, it's not your traditional like, okay, I'm gonna go, what do I want to do today? Okay, I want to go start arm wrestling. It's not that traditional thing to do.
It's what arm wrestling is, one of those things where it's like you're in a bar or you're with your friends, you've had a couple beers, and then someone brings it up and you have to arm wrestle. And that's how it was, I guess, growing up. Not that I was in bars very young, but you know what I mean. So when I joined the military at the age of 21, I ended up moving to Nova Scotia, and I was always interested in arm wrestling because my father was always good at it. I mean, if there was ever something going on at the house and arm wrestling was going on, he was always very, very good. He would never lose. So me growing up, some skinny little scrawny kid, I was fascinated. I was like, my father, he's very good at this. So when I moved to Nova Scotia in 2016, I realized I saw it through a Facebook page that arm wrestling. There was an arm wrestling club that was local, and in my head, I was like, you can't be serious. Like, this is crazy. So long story short, I ended up getting in contact with the president of the Arm Wrestling Association who runs it in Nova Scotia. And literally the week after, I went to an arm wrestling practice. And I guess the rest is history.
So, I think what most people, like you said, when they think of arm wrestling, it's kind of this like, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here just for a second. Let me tell you about Smoking Gun Coffee. They're a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to produce a quality coffee at an affordable price. They only buy coffee from small coffee farmers around the world with a cup score of at least 85. Each batch is roasted to order for maximum freshness. They also donate a large portion of their proceeds to organizations that help local communities, veterans, first responders, or you can donate to the foundation of your choice at the checkout by going to www.smokingguncoffee.com. That's SMOKIN Gun Coffee. At school, when you're growing up, or like at a family function, like, who's the tougher cousin or whatever. It seems like old man strength too plays a big role in not necessarily maybe the sport aspect of it, but like the just the everyday person, doing some arm wrestling. You go up against maybe your dad or your uncle or whatever, and they're 40, 50, 60, however kind of old they are at the time, and it's like, dang, like these people don't lift weights, or they don't, they're not necessarily physically active people, but
Yeah, it's definitely something where I'm sure it's happened to you. If not, it's happened to friends where you'll end up arm wrestling someone. It doesn't matter if they're small, if they're big, but sometimes you find that one guy who is just so stupid strong, like ridiculously strong. And then you just want everybody to arm wrestle this person, or you just can't believe that this guy just won't lose. It's not even coming close. And you'll find a lot of that in this sport, not at a competitive level, so to say, because obviously it's very, very competitive, but a lot of newcomers who are coming into the sport. For someone like me, I've been doing this for 6 years competitively. And I can give an example. I was living in Ontario, technically this year, but I was living in Ontario last year. And I went to a Toronto arm wrestling practice. And there was this random kid who showed up. He was 16, 150 pounds, soaking wet. The guy's from Georgia. And so this guy just shows up at an arm wrestling practice, and this guy's hands are like stupid thick, like ridiculously thick. And I'm like, this kid's 15. So we end up like arm wrestling at a practice, and this guy is like insanely strong, like crazy strong. The guy's like short, he's skinny, he has big hands. And I'm like, how old are you? And he's like, oh, I'm 15. Or he might have even been 14. I don't recall exactly, but very young. And I was like, man, I'm like, you have so much potential. I'm like, you're so young. You started way before I have. And now he's provincial champion in Ontario after 1 year because he's just been training so much. But I mean, you'll catch like you were saying, old man strength. It happens where even on the competitive side of things, it feels like the older you are, and if you've been doing it for a long time, your tendons just strengthen over time. So sometimes you'll get much older guys who are just very, very, very good. And it's not even from a muscular standpoint, it's just from tendons.
Huh. That's pretty crazy though to have, somebody that young, and I guess maybe just that, just something in the water down there or something. I don't know.
There's definitely something in the water down in Georgia because right now there's a match coming up on June 25th. It's a Canadian versus a guy from Georgia for technically number one in the world. And this guy from Georgia, I don't know the exact stats, but he's like 6'3", 400 pounds or something. Very like a monster. So
Big
yeah, there's
guy.
something in the water in Georgia.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, just I guess, maybe working on the farm or something down there. But no,
Man,
when it comes to actually like you talked about training, like how much of training is it like a typical sport where it's like you have some training is like strength based training, weight room style training, and then other training is just like technique based?
yeah. So I literally just came from an arm wrestling workout specifically at the gym. And what when you're doing arm wrestling specific work, we call them arm wrestling specifics. And essentially it's actual tools that we use as arm wrestlers in order to become better at arm wrestling. The fundamentals would be your fingers, your hands, um, cupping, so bringing in your hand like in this motion, supinating, pronating, back pressure. So there's definitely, quite a few specific ways to train arm wrestling. You would probably recognize an arm wrestler in the gym because we would be doing some really weird stuff. Example, I would be putting on on a cable machine, I would put on a tool, and the tool would literally be just training my fingers, like in this motion. And you would just see my hand doing something like this. It's very weird, but it strengthens your fingers and it strengthens that arm wrestling cupping motion. So in the sport of arm wrestling, it seems like in the past couple of years, because the sport is growing so rapidly at the moment, we've been getting a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of power lifters, people who just are crazy strong who are coming into the sport and are doing very well. It just takes time from a tendon standpoint. But there is a way to train for arm wrestling. It's through very specific movements. You can't really just go to the gym and do bicep curls, so to say, and have a good bench press to be good, but those do help. Everything helps for sure.
Yeah, I never really thought about training, training your fingers, training that aspect. It almost seems like toughening it up, I guess, in a lot of ways. You have definitely have some muscular development of like making your muscles look good, and then you have like the muscular development of like making them useful as well. And I feel like that's definitely a lot of use training. And it's just something that I've never even really thought about from like that angle of specific, specific training for in the, because in the weight room, it's like even sports like, let's say, basketball, baseball, football, like you'll mostly see all those people, all those athletes doing the pretty much the same stuff. But it's kind of cool from a arm wrestling perspective to have them doing, definitely way more sports specific things. When you first started doing those, like, is there a lot of soreness, a lot of discomfort when it comes to first starting those kind of gym movements like that?
Yeah, and it still happens today. I mean, most arm wrestlers will tell you what tennis elbow feels like, what straining your tendons feel like, what pulling a muscle in your rear tricep, busting a bicep. When it comes to training arm wrestling specifics at a gym or even on an arm wrestling table, we're talking like pulley system and actual tools. I don't think it hurts so much as if we're comparing directly to arm wrestling, but many workouts after doing the specifics, I am very sore in certain areas, including the inner of my I guess lower of the bicep area right before the forearm. And fingers usually are a big one where it becomes very sore.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's for people getting into the sport when you're going to start doing specifics, you'll realize how weak your fingers can be or how weak your your forearm strength is, or it's a whole different ballgame.
Is there a particular like job that people come from that like has the most success transferring over into the world of arm wrestling? Because I feel like, you know, most people who would just like would work at a desk necessarily wouldn't have very strong fingers or very strong, you know, just naturally, you know, from their job like that. Is there any certain industry or field where people are just like, wow, they have kind of an advantage just starting
Mhm.
off?
I definitely think there are jobs out there that, I mean, I wouldn't say that help, but to give them like a much better start. Just to name a few, if you're a farmer, I think that's going to help because you're pulling hay all day with your forearms, right? And everything else that I can't think of. Something as simple as a painter. If you're painting all day, your wrist goes up, your wrist goes down. I've done painting before, not as a job, but just for fun, and it hurts. Like your forearms just burn. If you do construction, I would have to think because of like using hammers. Um, anything that would require like your fingers and your hands. Rock climbers is a big one.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get the odd rock climber who comes in and his grip is just ridiculous, like better than a lot of people's grip. Everybody is innovating. Everyone is trying to find what works the best, and everybody is different. You know, someone who is 5'6" has a small arm, small hands will be much different than someone who, like me, who is 6 foot. I'm a little bit on the bigger side, and I have long hands. I have long forearms, so the mechanical aspect is going to be much different, and that's where you would use your own leverage. But I don't know of anyone, and I don't think from the top of my head people are switching jobs or switching careers just to have that benefit. I think it's more just like changing their training, changing their lifestyle choices, if it's from food to substances to just the way you're training at the gym, lifestyle. Yeah, I don't think it's.
How
I
much
don't think
of
there's.
how much of it is like technique though versus strength? Like if you had not necessarily a great arm wrestler, but a pretty good arm wrestler who's had some good time into the sport, training, knows their technique versus just somebody who comes in as and is really strong, you know, kind of comparing it to like a martial art, you know, would there be any possibility where just a really strong person could maybe outdo someone that has, you know, a really good technique and you know, obviously would somehow some in some ways match them in their weight as well?
Mhm. That's a tricky question because obviously, if you're getting a guy who weighs 200 pounds and he's 6 foot, so to say, he's been powerlifting, he's been lifting stupid heavy weight his whole life. And then you get a guy who's 5 foot who's been doing it for 6 months and is fairly strong with fairly good technique. You know, the bigger guy probably has a good chance, but experience does play a big role, and it does not take much. I mean, the arm wrestler has to be obviously strong, but has to be strong in a specific way. Because if you're just grabbing two new guys, like let's say you and your friend, the same size, you guys lift all the same weights, um, or let's say that your friend lifts heavier and you don't, and you guys are, let's say you're the exact everything, he's probably going to win if there's no technique involved. But as soon as you start introducing technique, leverage and technique become massive. And, you know, example, I can arm wrestle someone who's 350 pounds, we're going to say, just randomly. And all I have to do is just make sure I have a little bit more hand control and not let him not let him get to a certain point. And more than likely, there's going to be nothing he can do. So
Gotcha.
experience, I would say, plays a very big role. But there are times where someone comes in and is just very strong, and that's when we're like, this guy has potential or this girl has potential.
Yeah. And how much of it too is like, is there like a natural almost inclination some people have for just knowing almost how to like move their arm and shoulder mobility and like is there more of a natural inclination for some people to whereas and maybe not even physically but sometimes like mentally as well like knowing and having like a visual you know um kind of like brain to eye understanding of like okay
Mm-hmm.
if this person's in this position then I should kind of move more this way like is that something that you see comes natural for some people or is it pretty much just like has to be taught?
Honestly, and From my experience, it's something that's more taught. You definitely will get the oddball, the odd guy, the odd woman who ends up doing fairly well, so to say, when they're starting. But I've been doing this for 6 years and I'm still learning. It's definitely its own martial art. And something as simple as 1 millimeter will make a match a big difference.
That's crazy.
So some people definitely have an advantage over other people when they started. I see a lot of these young guys that are up and coming now, and they're so much farther ahead than where I was at that age. And I just wish I would have known. But with the sport rapidly growing, YouTube, there's so much content out there nowadays that it's not hard to kind of get a visual before you actually start. And a lot of people are picking it up very quick, for sure. But it's something that's more taught, in my opinion.
With training, is there how do you, besides obviously like the things you were describing earlier, like when you practice, is it just like is it a practice arm wrestling match, or is there kind of like drills you do, or how does that practice work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so actually, this is a good question because this will go for many people who don't know where to start in arm wrestling. Arm wrestling for practices, a lot of people, when they're getting into the sport, they get intimidated. And I was intimidated when I started because the first thing you think of is, I'm going to show up to this practice and then I'm going to get beat. That's not what practice is for. I mean, obviously, people are going to be arm wrestling. Some are going to go lighter, some are going to go stronger. But the reality is when you have a practice going and you have a good club, which I've been very fortunate. I've traveled quite a bit and people have been really good. You put Obviously you set up the table, and for the whole time, everybody is just helping each other get better. There is no, as soon as you show up, the guy's just trying to beat you. It's like actually practicing movements, putting each other in awkward positions, and then holding, making sure that both people are learning from each other and becoming better arm wrestlers. So there's not so much this, like obviously it's easy to be intimidated when you're coming up and people are way bigger and they look stronger and they are stronger, but people are amazing. Practices, all you're doing is you're just practicing your different movements, getting your tendons strengthened. Obviously, over time your muscle's going to build, it's going to get stronger, and it's a great community.
And how often does somebody, how often should somebody, and can somebody practice, 7 days a week, or is there kind of that time where, let the body heal kind of deal?
Mm-hmm. No, 7 days a week would be, I mean, unless you're Devin Lara, the one who's trying to go for number one in the world currently. But in the way I train, which I think is a little bit more on the minimal side, is one practice a week. So I would go up with my friends. We each have arm wrestling tables, and we just train on them for an hour to 3 hours. It could be depending on the time frame, how we're feeling. But usually, once your arm hurts, because throughout a practice, if you go hard enough, you will get pain throughout your arm, and it's not going to be fun. Sometimes you're going to walk home and your arm's going to be throbbing in certain areas, and you're going to say, I don't understand how people do this. That happens more at the beginning, but you kind of know the experience with what hurts, what is good pain, so to say. So in terms of recovery, I would say if your arm is hurting, give it 48 hours, ice it, take a hot bath.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. And what kind of, is there any ambidextrous arm wrestlers out there? Is it pretty much just focus on one and really get that one arm good?
No, I think once you get into the sport, at the beginning, you tend to train one arm more than the other. However, as you grow with the sport, you end up training both arms, and eventually you compete with both arms. To give you an example for myself, when I first started, my left arm, I felt so weird. It was honestly one of the weirdest things, and I was like, I'm gonna get killed. Like there's no point on me training this arm because I don't feel comfortable. But experience, just time. Eventually, you're like, you know what? Let me train it, but who cares? It starts to get a little bit good, and then you just pick up, and eventually everybody pulls with their both arms, but not everybody will compete with both. Gotcha. However, when you get to a little bit of a higher level, I would say like when you're coming out of amateur, that's when most people are arm wrestling or pulling, so to say, with two arms.
Is there any kind of like gentleman's agreement, when you're going up against somebody where it's like, I'm not using my dominant arm, you don't use your dominant arm kind of thing?
No, unless you're at practice and you're trying to work on something specifically. When you come into a tournament, it's like it's full pin. There's no sympathy at all. And that's why you prep for a tournament, when you feel like you're ready, try one. But during practice, it's usually pretty decent. People are very, very good about that. If you ever feel pain, you kind of let the guy know and you adjust. In a tournament, however, when your name is called and it's time for you to get on the table, that like someone's running through someone or it's going to be a good match. So yeah,
How does one prep for? Like, what does a prep entail?
it honestly varies person to person. I know people who don't have a prep, so to say, and they just train hard up until the tournament. I prefer the method of train consistently, try to get better over obviously with time, and then as soon as I have a tournament date, let's say it's 9-10 weeks out, that's when I would prep for like an 8-9 week, 10 week even prep where based on my little experience of 6 years, I would try to like obviously I'm trying to eat a lot of food or I'm trying to eat clean, try to hit a certain weight. And then I'm training very, very hard, always trying to get my numbers up, like pushing my body or my arms. And then I have a little bit of a more of a relaxed period, like 3 weeks prior, where my weights drop consistently. I go on the much higher rep side. And then a week before tournament, I just do not do anything. I just relax to get my arms fully rested.
And what muscle groups are pretty important to the sport that most people wouldn't think? Obviously the arms, the hand, but like, is there anything else that gets pretty well trained that most people probably wouldn't take into consideration?
Your abs, your abs. And I only know this from the last year and a half, and it was something that I was not using in arm wrestling. When everything has to be tight, so your hand, like in order for you to win, you obviously want to be as close as possible because the farther you go, you're losing leverage. You want in an arm wrestling match, you want to obviously be tight here, but you want to be tight on your core, and everything has to be close together. If you have a guy who's, to give an example, if you have a guy who's super strong here but is only using just the arm and is not setting up properly, like shoulders, everything tucked in, the guy who's doing that's getting way more leverage over you. So in a tournament, something as simple as strengthening your core, getting super tight, and I would say maybe your back would be another one. I mean, back is kind of fundamental because it's a pulling movement most of the time, and arm wrestling it's a pulling movement. But maybe something would be abs and maybe a little bit of tricep as well.
Gotcha. And it seems like from like if you just were to watch two kids arm wrestling, there's definitely a lot less technique going on. It's pretty much just which person is going to bully the other person down, who's stronger, like all that stuff. But when it comes to like actually leveling up a little bit, you want to take it to the next level. What would be that one? Obviously training and all that stuff, practice will be important to do, but like if you just came across two kids and you're like, okay, I'm going to teach this kid's going to win and I'm going to show them how, like what would be that one pointer that you would say, this is how we're going to get you to win this?
I would say if it's just two random kids, let's say arm wrestling, everybody's watching, and this kid gets humiliated, I would probably tell him to make sure everything is in close, tighten up your abs, get in tight, bring your elbow to your hand, bring it super close to your body. So there should be about a fist when you start a match. There should be a fist in between your hand and your shoulder. And I would say bring everything center and stay tight. And when the person says go, lean back and act like you have a cup in your hand and just tip it to your other shoulder.
I like that. That's
just
cool.
being in tight, and yeah, just making sure everything's connected, because the farther you are away from your body, the less ideal it is in
So
reality.
so you're saying a lot of it's, movement, not just of the arm, but the whole body,
Mm-hmm.
is moving and creating force as well.
Of course, because arm wrestling is a pull. For the most part, it's a pulling movement. You have to be strong, You have to be quick. Your reaction time has to be good. And something as simple as that flinch when the person says go. So when that ref says ready, go, you have to be super quick to flinch, like that split second, because every millimeter counts in arm wrestling. You can lift the exact same weight, you can be the exact same strength, but if you get 1 millimeter more, you're going to win. That's just what it is. So if I was telling someone, like if there was something I gave them, it's just be fast and be tight.
And
Be tight.
is there a rule against like being having a like a level of tightness, I guess is the only way I can really describe it. You know, when you're first, you know, starting and you're starting with the other person, how do you kind of determine that level before go time is really called? Like how tight, I guess, are
Yeah.
you before that? Is there kind of like a, I mean, it'd be hard to have like a rule. You can only be, you know, this tight because it'd be so
Yeah,
subjective.
exactly.
But like,
Yeah.
how do you kind of judge that? And is there any rule against like doing, you know, pre-starting?
Yeah. So arm wrestling, in all fairness to say, it's a game of cheating. So it's what can you get away with in the match that's going to allow you to win. Like that's why you'll see some people like the match won't, like if you ever watch a match on YouTube and it's pretty intense right off the start, they're trying to get every inch on that person's hand. When you're determining, you know, how tight someone is, so to say, there's not like a ruler they put there and they say, okay, you're 3 inches, you're 3 inches and 1/4 off type thing. It's when you're lining up on the table, your elbow will touch the pad, right? Your hand will come up, you guys will connect hands. And right before they say go, they want both of your shoulders in. So you can never be arm wrestling away. You put your arm on the table, your other shoulder here comes in. So it's like straight with the table. And the same will go with the other person. When your shoulders are both parallel to each other, both hands are connected, and you can see both of your thumb knuckles. The ref has to see both of those thumb knuckles. At that point, you should be pretty much ready to go. Because when they see thumb knuckles, your shoulders are in, you guys have gripped up, it's pretty much going to be a ready go if everything looks straight. But you can't be so close where the other person's hand is like touching your shoulder. You have to have one fist. So you have to be about this.
Gotcha.
And you can't be, because on a table, you each have a pad, right? And you cannot be leaning over the other person's pad. You have to be on your side of the table. So that's where the refs would judge, but usually each people pick their own side.
How much of the sport too is like a game plan? Like, has anyone ever gone into it like I'm gonna be behind first, or is it just kind of like what whatever I can do to jump ahead and just get it straight off, or is there kind of that like let this person get worn out a little bit and then take them down?
Yeah, good question. And I would like to hope I have a good answer for you. So when prepping for a match, usually it's kind of good to know your competition. At the beginning, it's a little bit more difficult because you're just getting into the sport. But once you start arm wrestling quite often and you know quite a few people, or if you're lucky enough and you're not the first people going up, watch these people when they're going to arm wrestle. When they line up to the table, watch their foot positioning because their foot positioning is going to determine how they're going to arm wrestle because it's a leverage game, right? So if their foot is more forward, there's a more chance they're going to be pulling straight back. It's like super simple terms. If their foot is wrapped around the table, then you think they might be going in a little bit more of a defensive position because they're stronger there. If you think their foot is jammed like up high on the table, like they're pushing, they're most likely going to essentially bench press your arm. They're coming in and they're lining up to push. So just from looking at someone's stance at a table, just from the legs, you can have an idea. Then you go to the hip. You look at the hip. How is the hip position? Are they leaned over the table more? Are they leaned back more? Or are they tucked against it? Because that will also determine. Then obviously at that point, if you know your opponent, if you know this person only does a top roll, then and you have a stronger top roll than this person, you'll want to do that. If this person is coming in and he is only in a hook because he's only good in the hook and you have a way to counter that, then you'll come up with a game plan mentally. But there's a lot before you going into a match. You want to see how the guy's positioning. You want to see how is he arm wrestling? Is he getting tired? And you also want to watch these people, the opponents breathing, because you want to catch them when they're breathing. If you're just that close, you're just that close from beating them. As soon as they're sucking, they're breathing for air, try to pin, because you lose energy.
Wow, this is crazy. I feel like I'm gonna start to dominate everybody now in some arm
Yeah,
wrestling.
yeah.
This is some good stuff, man. And does everybody kind of have their own like unique style when they first come in? Like, just like naturally have their leg in a certain position, or like, how does somebody really establish what they think they're best at? Because does it play? I feel like it may play a role in like who they face early on, or like how do you establish your style, I guess?
Another good question. I think I have a good answer for you. So usually when someone comes into the sport, you first are obviously going to look at their height, their weight, their age, because obviously are they still growing, their hand. And these are all going to be factors that could help them in certain ways, right? If the guy has a strong hand, well, you're probably more inclined to teach this person to use your hand more often, because you're probably going to dominate people in the hand control department. If this guy has super big biceps and he's super strong there, well, you would probably try to show this guy, like, look, forget about the hand so much. Like, obviously it's important, but focus on your hook. Hook is when you're tight in with someone and you're using your bicep more. And some people just naturally come in and they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And they're like, I don't know where to start. And eventually they start arm wrestling. They're trying to figure things out and then they get injured. And that's kind of what happened to me. And then once I got injured, I switched my style, and I've always done that style since, because I feel more comfortable. So with experience and with injuries, you will learn, but usually after a couple of months, someone usually finds a style that they feel most comfortable with in terms of positioning and just the way their body is. I mean, taking advantage of what you have.
And how common are injuries? Like, is it something that you're going to see an injury kind of at every event?
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that, because it's very important for people who are arm wrestling. And before I kind of get to that, I'll give advice to anybody who's watching this who has or wants to arm wrestle. When you're arm wrestling, always stay with your shoulder in your arm. Never look away. And if you're starting to lose your shoulder, don't look away and just follow and just be pinned. Because in arm wrestling, if you start to let your arm go in the opposite direction and you start to look away, all it takes, I believe, don't quote me, but I think it's about 14 pounds of pressure and your tricep is going to snap. It's only 14 pounds. So if someone does not know what they're doing, if someone does not know what they're doing, they can literally snap their arm in half and it's going to require surgery immediately.
That's crazy.
So in terms of like pain, if you can end up like, if I would not suggest starting arm wrestling with someone who has no idea what they're doing, I would definitely find a club. And for anyone who's listening to this, there's an app you can actually download. It's called ArmBet. It's developed by Devin Larratt, who's number 2 technically currently in the world right now. And it's almost like using Tinder, but not for dating, and it's for arm wrestling people. So essentially, you download the app, and it'll tell you your location and relativity to arm wrestlers who have that app around you, and it will say like so and so is 7 kilometers away, and it will say, okay, this person on their profile says 27 years old, has 6 years experience, has an arm wrestling table, has done 2 tournaments, so to say. This would be a great way to start if you're not sure what to do, because most people have no idea how to even get into the sport or where to start. And then from that moment on, when you get to a club, that's going to be the best opportunity for you to actually learn properly, because you definitely don't want to break your arm. And people have been doing it for a long time, have broken their arms. So it's no joke.
Yeah, no, it seems like it is. It's a very so much power just going into that event right there. How long is kind of that typical match?
I mean, I've had matches that lasted half a second, and I've had matches that went on for almost a minute.
Wow.
And that's where you determine how strong someone is and how their endurance is. So if you, and that will come off the style too, that will come off your type of style of arm wrestling. If you just immediately flash pin someone, It could be from a technique standpoint. It could be from a strength standpoint. It could be from experience. You just don't know. But if you see a match go on for 1 minute, a minute and a half, even 2 minutes, like that's very long. And usually your muscles, like the lactic acid is just going crazy. Like you're just exhausted. So it's a matter of, who has more endurance at that point, which is something you can train. The problem with having long matches, if you're in a tournament, is you're most likely going to have many other matches after. And obviously, telling you from experience, if you have a long match, when you're done, usually you'll lift up your arm and you'll get the blood flow going through your arm. But you might have a match in a minute and a half. Like it's that quick, and you're exhausted. Your arm's very sore. Your tendon is just on fire. You have ice on it. Your friend or yourself is just rubbing your arm to get the blood flow. It can suck. It can really suck because the guy who's coming up might not even have arm wrestled yet. He might be fresh, like ready to go, and you have 10 other guys to go through, plus go to the finals.
Wow. And how much like technology in the sport is there? You mentioned some of the stuff you get to like train with, but from a recovery standpoint, how much is technology within the sport?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I definitely think their technology helps in certain ways. I don't know the name of this thing that people use. It's one of those guns that like shock you. Has like a ball on the end. It will send, I believe it's electric shock or sound waves through your muscles. Essentially, I don't know what the name of it is, but people do use it for recovery, as it's a good way to get blood going through your muscles. Basic things, something as simple as either using a sauna, a steam room, going in a very hot bath, and ice. But from a technology standpoint, on the top of my head, I don't think there's a lot out there, so to say.
What is kind of the future of the sport looking like? I mean, is it growing? Is it kind of staying where it is? Is it getting smaller?
Yeah, so to start, arm wrestling has always been popular, but like I would even say the last 5 years have been phenomenal. The sport is literally every day. There's things that are happening that have never happened before. You're getting big YouTubers, famous, world famous bodybuilders such as Larry Wheels. I'm sure you know who that is.
Yeah.
Juji Mufu would be another one. I believe he did a lot of either calisthenics he started with, and then I got into powerlifting. And just seeing these people who have got into the sport at one point and who have promoted the sport has helped grow so much, because now we're getting bodybuilders, CrossFitters, powerlifters, we're getting rock climbers. Like there's so many different people coming into the sport. And in every country, well, for the most part in the world, every country, even state or province, you are more than likely to find many, many clubs around you. And if you're not sure where to start, obviously I said download ArmBet. And if not, look on Facebook. But it's growing very rapidly. In arm wrestling, you usually have provincials. You'll have a bunch of local tournaments that will happen throughout the year. If it's around you, you would have your provincials, your nationals, and then you would have worlds. And they're held all over the place. In each country, continent, or the nationals would be here in Canada. You would have nationals in the United States. You would have nationals in Europe. And then when it comes to worlds, you have you have all the countries competing against each other. It's very big. It's growing so fast.
What kind of, real shot does somebody have in this sport? Because you often hear from like, NBA, NFL, it's like point whatever percentage of people make it to this league. Like, if you want to become a very successful arm wrestler, is it still kind of at a stage where it's something that is doable? And how much of it kind of comes down to genetics?
Yeah, I think it's right now, I believe it's the best time to get into it in history. I think we have the best time where the sport is growing so rapidly. You have more tools than ever. You have more tournaments than ever. You have tournaments that are happening year round locally. You can win trophies, medals, money, sponsorships. And in the sport of arm wrestling, money is not a big thing yet, but I believe it's on its way. Like we're slowly getting there. But if you're someone who doesn't know where to start, definitely I would recommend getting into the sport now, because it's growing so fast. There's so much potential, and it's never too late to start. You're getting people who start at a very young age, and you're getting people who start at like 50 years old and end up doing well. It doesn't take anything to go to a provincial tournament, even if you lose all your matches. unless you want to go to nationals. At that point, there will definitely be um, pre-requirements. But I mean, you can show up at a tournament, lose all your matches, show up to another tournament and do okay. So I would think if there's someone who takes it seriously, finds a good club and trains it specifically long term, they could be at a national level. They can be at a national level in like 3 years, 2 years.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned like the ages, different age ranges. Is there an age though that like most competitors really start to kind of hit their strides?
It's difficult to say because nowadays we're getting all different age groups. I would definitely like to say like the sooner you start, the better. I mean, I'm seeing kids arm wrestling that are 10 years old in tournaments, which is phenomenal. I love to see that because they have 11 years on where I started. So if I would have been doing what I'm doing now plus 11 years, I could be up there towards like worlds, in my opinion. If you start earlier, it's going to help. But in terms of like potential, I think I'm seeing a lot of competitors in their mid to late 20s is where people are really popping off. Where I'm seeing like really big matches on maybe a world, not a world stage, but close to that.
It definitely seems like the world of sports is changing a lot, and the UFC I think has played a big role in that.
Mm.
Making fighting such a popular, just normal thing nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the world of arm wrestling could do to really take that next step into kind of popularity?
I think it's missing, and I'm going to explain a couple things here. So I don't want to feel like I'm rambling on. One, I think promoting. I think promoting needs to be done better. Not that it's not being done well. The promoting of arm wrestling leading up to events could be done much better, in my opinion, in comparison from North America to Europe. YouTubers, right now, I have a YouTube channel and I'm trying to bring a new avenue of people from like an entertainment standpoint. In the fitness world, you obviously have your bodybuilders, right? But then you have thousands of fitness influencers just vlog their life and they're just influencers, right? They do what they got to do. In the arm wrestling world, you're seeing 99.999% of arm wrestlers just filming matches, just filming arm wrestling matches. That's all it is. What I'm trying to do right now, and this I'm going long term on this with my YouTube channel, is bring maybe a fitness influencer lifestyle. Not that I'm not there, not even close, but more of like having fun, doing daily, interesting things, and then including like montages and just random arm wrestling style type videos, as opposed to then the next guy just posting matches online. Because I think that right now, besides promotion, I think that there's no, I know this sounds really bad to say, maybe like big YouTubers out there who are helping get the sport kicked off, but the sport is already doing very well. So I don't know if it requires that, but I think it would help a lot, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense.
Yeah, kind of that cultural influence, making
Mm-hmm.
people kind of aware of I think a lot of that comes down to with fitness. It's become such a big thing. Definitely with like you see it, just for an example, like the UFC does a really good job of I don't know how much you watch of
Phenomenal.
it, but of
I watch a
the
lot of it.
yeah, like the pre-fight, I can't remember what they call the
The
vlog,
prelims,
like the
uh,
vlog,
embedded,
yeah, the embedded stuff. Like
embedded.
that kind of stuff should be something that every league is doing. Every sport
I
league should
agree.
be doing something like
I
that because
agree.
you get such a personal feel. You get more than just like what the analysts have to say. You really get what the athlete is thinking, what they're what they're going through, the emotions. It connects
Mm-hmm.
you to the sport the way that the UFC's done that. I think better than
Oh,
any
100.
other
I agree.
sport. Any other
Yes.
sport.
I think arm wrestling, and I was literally saying this to my friend, one of my close buddies, about a year ago. I said arm wrestling needs to have promotion, like promotional videos, where it's just like UFC. If it means going to this person's house, getting a couple minutes of them with their family at home, and then watching how hard they're training for their tournament, to the cuts, to their nutrition. I think something like that would explode. Like it would bring arm wrestling to a whole new level because, like you just mentioned, not only do you get to experience people's lives, but you kind of get behind some people and you're like, I really vibe with this type of character. I really like this way he treats his family or the way this person trains. And I can't agree with you more. Yeah, I could not agree with you more.
Yeah. The arm wrestling Conor McGregor's out there somewhere just waiting to unleash unleash
It's
himself.
funny you say that because I thought about trying to go down that persona about a year ago, and I kind of did not because my YouTube channel, I'm trying to have that aspect where I can get young kids coming in and have like maybe someone to look up to in terms of like someone who's not drinking beer on video, who's not swearing and stuff like that, right? Because that's a lot of people do that. And then I was like, I can't be that Conor McGregor character where I'm just like saying so much crap and nonsense, and then I go back on my channel and it's like back to normal.
Yeah.
But yes, I think we're missing some of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the cool thing is too, like there's so many possible good characters out there for a sport to embrace. You know, you have the Conor
Mhm.
McGregors, yeah, you have the trash talkers, but you also have kind of the the quieter types. You have you have the Dustin Poirier types. You have
Dustin
all
Poirier,
these
yeah,
different, different,
Khabib.
yeah, you have all these different people and with their different personalities, and a lot of it is characterization, but like I think that's plays such an important role in kind of like you're saying the boosting of the popularity and getting people involved and making it a
Hmm.
making it really kind of a show and making it something that people tune back into because they want to see what their favorite arm wrestler is
Hmm.
doing. A lot of it, I guess starting kind of with the old style wrestling, kind of just
Hmm.
boosting the personalities.
And to add on to what you're saying, like in arm wrestling, there are a lot of characters, so to say, and they're genuine. There generally is, but if we are going to compare to like something like the UFC, I mean, we're not even remotely close. We have some characters who, they're super cool until they get on the arm wrestling table, and then they're just pissed off. Like they're just really pissed off. You have some people who like to play mind games, like Devin Larratt, the one who was going up against the Georgian Hulk, the guy from Georgia. He likes to play mind games and he'll play games on the table, but we are still missing we're missing that whole character aspect where we just have some ruthless people. And yeah, I could not agree with you more. Like that would be very exciting to see, and I think we will see it eventually. I just think it's going to take some time.
Yeah, get the right ideas flowing in there, and I think anything could take off. Anything has the possibility to be entertaining. As we've seen
Mm-hmm.
throughout. We'll literally watch people in their daily lives and just watch what they do. The
Mm-hmm.
Kardashians or whatever. Like anything can be entertaining. You just have to be able to kind of create that good content and take it from
Yeah,
there. So
you have
yeah,
to figure out a reason why people want to watch.
yeah, absolutely
And
create a story.
yeah, I cannot agree with you more. And right now, like arm wrestling, now in order to watch these big events, you have to pay, which is great because now we're at the point where people are actually putting money into the sport, which I don't believe was being done before. But
That's cool. That's pretty interesting. But no, man, yeah, it's really cool to get you on here and learn about not just the technique and about all that stuff, but also the sport in general and what it takes, how you do it. Like I said, I feel like next time I go up and I get to arm wrestle somebody, I feel like I'll have a little bit of that edge, a little bit of that inside intel on what's going on out there.
make sure they didn't see this podcast before.
I know I'm thinking about just hiding it for a
Yeah,
while,
exactly, exactly.
doing some betting on who can
Yeah,
win the arm
go do some
wrestling.
go do some arm wrestling first, and then post the video.
Yeah. I'll film
Yeah,
it and then
man.
add it to the end of this. What I
Yeah,
learned.
exactly, exactly.
But no, man, like I said, thank you for coming on here.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. It was really nice to connect with you, and yeah, I could not be happier. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if people want to reach out to you and learn more about it or just follow, along with what you're doing, where can they do all that stuff?
Social media, Instagram, just my name, Keanu McGill, and YouTube, Keanu McGill. If anybody wants more of the entertainment side of it, I'm trying my best currently to put out entertaining arm wrestling content on my YouTube channel. So yeah, just Keanu McGill.